Your body is your unconscious mind that does not understand the difference between an experience that has happened in your life and emotion created by thought alone. Let's go. I'm Jacob Smith, and this is Observant Attention. Okay. I truly hope episode 1 gave you a different insight to digest this material. My side goal is to force you to hit the pause button a couple times and maybe by a notepad and prompt you to use it. But for the most part, I want to make sure that everyone is capable of opening their mind, putting aside their ignorance, taking awareness, and being available to learn this material. This episode, many of you already know exists. It's common sense, and it's stuff that you learn at an early age. But none of us really digest. See, that's the thing. For those of you who have learned this, I sincerely hope this will guide you into understanding. Because as we know, the application does not begin until the understanding does. Until the understanding of impact does. For those of you who have not heard, this about to blow your mind. To begin, I want to touch on personal experiences with visualization, meditation, and manifestation. So a few weeks ago, I got really excited about the prospect of being in control of my subconscious mind. And as I did my research on that stuff, I learned that visualization and meditation, manifestation about future goals had made a big impact on a lot of different people. And I knew this before, but I decided to use the practice for myself. Well, this podcast was part of that manifestation, this part of that visualization, among other things that I will eventually talk about during this season. However, right now, I just want to touch on the fact that it had made an impact on me bigger than I could have imagined. I wake up, I think about what I want. I think about what I want during the day, and I think about what I want in the future, and I fall asleep with the same thing. I fall asleep with the prospect of having exactly what I want laid out for me in the future. I daydream, I set goals, and these answers come to me. It's weird. I can't explain. Actually, I can't explain it. I can't explain it right now. I can explain it as we proceed through this season, but it has a lot to do with stuff that I need to help you understand first. Okay. Think about some real dreams that you've had. Okay. That wasn't real, right? It was just a figment of your imagination, your brain, but it sure felt like it. You woke up, your hands were sweaty, and, or even you were sad because you couldn't take the money you just won with you. I've been there, but that's because your brain couldn't tell the difference. And for you lucid dreamers that can change and alter your dreams based on your decisions, congratulations, but not a lot of us can do that. So why can't our brain tell the difference, right, between imagination or visualization and reality? Well, it's because the same part of your brain lights up. And check this out. So there's an experiment done with 3 separate groups, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it can be found online. So the first group was given pianos, right? And they were told to practice a variation of notes. The second was told to do the same, except without pianos, just using visualization techniques, same notes. The third was given a piano, but they were not told what to practice. The brains of all the participants were scanned before and after the experiment, and after 5 days, each group was told to play those set of notes. Well, as you may have guessed, the first group showed great results after 5 days of practice, with a certain part of their brain demonstrating a neurological enhancement, somewhere around 25%. Don't quote me on that, but it is close. The third group showed little to no improvement, around 2%, and the second group that merely imagined themselves playing piano for 5 days straight showed essentially the same results as the first group at 23%, because They formed similar neurological pathways in their brain in order to enhance their practical skill. This was also the case with 3 separate groups shooting free throws in a similar experiment with similar numbers. You see, visualizing creates these neural pathways, right, that send signals throughout your brain in relatively the same way as physical practice. Now, I haven't learned this myself in school, but there's a great doctor, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'll reference him quite a bit throughout this series, and I'll reference him at the end of this episode, that talks about this neurological enhancement. And it's the way your brain reacts to reality, an experience that you had, and a visualization or an experience that you think you had. So this relates to the material in several different ways. The first of which is if thought alone, can improve and enhance your brain stimulation, consider how much of an impact your thoughts have on your daily life, right? Another way is the impact visualizing your goals has on your desire to achieve them. So if you're constantly thinking about what you don't want, you will manifest what you don't want, just simply because you keep putting all your energy on that. And we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. Now, we have roughly 70,000 thoughts a day, right? 70,000, I think, is the number, 60,000, somewhere in there, whatever. Many are uncontrollably negative, overthinking, doubt, insecurities, whatever. Just for a second, think about this. Think about how powerful your mind truly is, because we've been taught to live through our senses, right? Seeing is believing. No. Think about this. Believing is what you see, because perspective is the power. Remember how I said you versus you in the first episode? Perspective allows you to control the external factors. I'll give an example. I got a buddy who he's a poker player. I'd call him almost professional, like semi-professional. He's working his way up. And he was working a decent job, but his passion was in poker. So what he would do is he'd drive and he'd visualize himself getting interviewed by the top commentators in the poker world. He'd visualize himself winning tournaments, playing at these tables. And about a week ago, he turned $27 into $65,000. Just in, I think it was a span of 3 days. Changed his life. And it stems from manifesting what you want and knowing what you deserve. Another buddy of mine is going through something similar right now. He's manifesting what he wants. It's a law of attraction. It's visualization. It's conditioning that brain. Now, you might not understand how or why right now, but that's the beauty of this podcast. I get to tell you, and I get to explain exactly how. And it's going to come. You are what you imagine yourself to be. Imagination is the most powerful of the 6 faculties. A guy named Bob Proctor wrote The Art of Living, and he talks about the 6 faculties we have: imagination, intuition, will, perception, memory. That's 5. I had the 6th. Don't know where it went. But that's 5 of the 6. And imagination is among the most powerful of those. And if you don't know what to be, ask for a little bit of guidance. Ask in your subconscious mind. We'll talk about that later on. But imagination is so powerful. It's the most powerful of all your mental faculties. So use it to your advantage. And we'll talk about how and why right now. It is in that emotional state of need that we will slowly alter perception. So once you decide to imagine a need, not a want, not a lust, right? A need, something that you need to change in your life, that's when you start to alter your perception on it. There's a misconception that you need to know how. You don't need to know how. Nobody needs to know how. You just need to know that it's possible. You need to know that you can. And that goes back to reality. People tell you all the time, be realistic. People told me about being realistic about this podcast. People, there's multiple times in life where I said, I want to do something. And somebody said, be realistic. We talked about that, right? What is realistic is in your mind. You know what realistic is. So if you have a need for something, you're able to imagine it, which will alter your perception about it. I took time to study myself and figured out where my passions lied, and that's kind of how I've done this. I've manifested what I want. I want to talk to people. I want to eventually help people. I want to pursue the act of service. I don't want to teach and preach. I want to help you understand for yourself so you can apply it to your life. We waste so much time on social media. I used to waste so much time on social media, TV shows, worrying, just all the things that we're scared to do. It is like dig deep. We're very scared to dig deep and find out what we're truly meant for. And that's something once I put aside, I was able to figure out. Now, imaginative control is very important to understand because imagination being one of the most, if not the most important faculty, is important to have control over. Something that has always been an interest of mine is how we've been controlled. And no, not by the government, you conspiracists, but by ourselves. By our own brain. How? Through beliefs and attitudes adapted over time called your subconscious mind. Our own brain, through our learned thoughts and emotions, have been programmed to do the thinking for us. Let me say that again. That was really choppy. Through our beliefs and attitudes adapted over time called your subconscious mind, our own brain, through learned thoughts and emotions, have been programmed to do the thinking for us. Again, I fucked up. I apologize. But everybody knows that, right? Like everybody knows that your beliefs and your history of what you know, what you've come to understand stems from the past and your thoughts and emotions. Well, I'll tell you something right now. I don't stand for that unless I'm doing the programming. Not any outside sources. I need to do the programming. And once I understood this, I tried to dig deeper and figure out how to do the programming. Well, what do I find out? Your eyes don't see and your ears don't hear. Our brain sees through the lens of our eyes and our ears hear through the canal of our ear. But our brain is the one thing, the one mass that is doing the processing. Our brain is the one responding to what we see and hear through emotional signals, reactive from our beliefs. How about that? Think about all the different kinds of things that have happened to you and to other people, and think about the difference in response. That's because you're processing it differently than the person beside you. You may not feel like it's a choice, but it is. And I'll explain that. And it's not the bad things that happen that cause negative emotions. It's our perception of those bad things, right? Let's use an example. Like if somebody passes away, you can either be sad that they're gone or be happy that they're moved on to a better place. Now, once you get to that like acceptance, right? That's when you start to move on with your life and you start to accept that somebody has passed away. Well, what if we could control our emotions right away? Yes, it's healthy to grieve in a certain sense, but it's bigger than that. This is bigger than that, right? And this is what it leads into. And I'll explain this because I'm sort of spoiling the next episode, but this was the basis. I think this tied in this season better than any other episode. Everything is so damn applicable and you should listen to every single episode, but this next part really changed a lot for me. So Joe Dispenza, I mentioned him earlier, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He had this vision that humans could control themselves, and he studied and he studied and he studied, and he ended up putting this video on YouTube, and I'll reference the video in my episode show notes. But I also reference them next episode. So there's two parts to it. Thoughts create a chemical in your body called emotion, right? Since 90% of your thoughts or 95% of your thoughts are unconscious, you begin to become familiar with certain emotions over time. Stands to reason. Whatever that may be, guilt, happiness, pain, jealousy, they're all familiar to you because they're always around. You've felt them before, and you will continue to feel them. And since they are past emotions, right? You feel them now because you felt them in the past, you're familiar with them. That means you're actively living in the past, which means that you're predicting your future. Hold on. Just bear with me. As humans, we love to cling on to what's familiar rather than what we don't know. especially as we get deeper and deeper into our beliefs, because change is uncomfortable, which is normal. We're creatures of habit. First step to change, think about what you're thinking about. Think about what you're thinking about. That's when the game starts. It's scary. Trust me, it's scary and slightly difficult at times because we fear the unknown. But if done continually, you'll hit a metaphorical threshold that will eradicate all your fear and that will help put your mind to rest at all times. I've done it. I've been there. It's a state of awareness that allows you to regulate and filter these emotions. And that goes back to ignorance and awareness, right? Awareness is thinking about what you're thinking about. This, once you find out what you're thinking about, eventually begins to reprogram your subconscious mind through habitual understanding, right? Because you catch yourself on a bad vibration, you catch yourself in a bad thought, and you find ways around switching it. And we'll talk about how to do that exactly, tangibly. And then you begin to switch it. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes, right? Because habit is continual stuff. Things like abundance, freedom, energy every day are not consistent because it feels good to feel bad. In some states, like stress is just as addictive as cigarettes or alcohol. That's the thing. Like we hold on to stress because it makes us believe we are somebody. We fight with our spouse because maybe the spark's not there. Like, sometimes that happens, right? Like it's because stress is an addictive chemical that our brain reacts to. And since we don't know how to control it, or we've never been trained to control it through emotional intelligence, it then begins to formulate and become this leech that sticks onto our brain, so we feel like we don't know anything else. If you are able to become familiar with good vibrations, you are then becoming somebody else entirely, because you are recognizing when your moods or feelings are stemming from, where your moods and feelings are stemming from, and actively leaving your lack behind. But habit is very important for this. So, I was somebody that struggled with a little bit of a lack of emotional intelligence, and I never thought that until I really started doing my research. And the more I did this, the more I recognized those anxious moments in the day, that gut feeling that, I don't want to get out of bed, that laziness. But at one point or another, I started to change my entire makeup. My fear, my failure, things that I didn't think I could do became things that I knew I was more than capable of. Because I'm going to use an example. I'm sure that there has been times in your life where you have seen the road to what you want to do so clearly, yet whether it took 10 minutes or 10 hours, something came, boom, crashed down in front of you, and that was it, right? End of story. You couldn't think any further, and you left it in the dust. Well, the good thing is if that's still your passion and that's still your goal, you still have the first part of the road set up. That barrier, that metaphorical barrier, can be moved. That barrier is fear. That barrier is failure, fear of failure. It's realistic, right? So personally, I think I know. I don't want to say think. I know this is all programming. And I'll keep explaining here. Personality. Think, act, feel. Simple enough, right? If you want to change your personal reality, you must change your personality. Think, act, feel. It's a choice, every day, habitual. Does this make sense yet? If you want to change your personal reality, your perspective, you must change your personality. Well, that's hard. I can't change my personality. Well, think, act, feel. If you're aware of what you're thinking about, if you're consciously aware of it all the time, habitually, eventually you're going to be able to program those negative thoughts out of yourself. That will allow you to act differently. That will allow you to control your feelings or emotions better. And again, we'll get more deep into that. But the basis of thinking and acting and feeling is your personality, or your personality's the basis is thinking, acting, and feeling. It's a choice. Okay? Well, how do we get stuck? How do we get here? Well, The stronger the emotion in your past, the more you become that emotion, which is now a long-term memory. This then catches your brain's attention. Then you think within the circuits of the past experience, causing you to chemically feel trapped in the boundary of emotion from your past experiences because you don't know any other emotion. That's why trauma hooks onto us like leeches. This Dr. Dispenza, he breaks it down in such a way which is so easily understandable that I wish I had learned this 5 years ago. I'm happy that I learned it today, and I can't wait to apply it to my life because it is so applicable, and I've seen great change in myself by doing this. It's our experience that control us. And we have the ability to change that with the knowledge of this. Once you begin to change thoughts and feelings that have been subconsciously programmed in your mind for months, years, decades, your body tells the brain to think thoughts that revert back to Your body tells your brain to think thoughts to revert back to what it knows. And this is why we have such a hard time breaking out of this, right? Moving on. Example, trade that emotion for an elevated emotion. In the moment, when you're having an anxious thought, when you're having insecure issues, find something to be grateful for. There's always something to be grateful for. Trade that for gratitude, okay? It takes time to program this because we've never practiced it. And it seems hard to fathom because we've never practiced it. But eventually this will create a synchronicity, right, within you, because the more you control your thoughts and the more positively you think, then your subconscious processes be able to attract what you want, and how you feel is able to attract what you want. And we'll talk about that, the law of attraction. It's actually it's not a rule of attraction, it's the law of attraction. So you don't need to allow the environment to control your subconscious. Feel connected to the future. Feel powerful in the future than being connected in the past. If you're constantly living in a state of survival, overthinking is a big issue we all have, then we're going to think overthinking thoughts all the time. Well, he uses the example, if you're getting chased by we'll use lion, you're not going to think about improving yourself. You're going to think about running away from that lion. It's the same thing with overthinking. Unless you stop overthinking, you're not going to be able to fix it. You're just going to continue to overthink. In fact, we mentally prepare ourselves for the worst case scenario every day because we believe we have a better chance of surviving. But that's not the case. But because what this does is it conditions our brains, it conditions our emotions to become familiar. Then this brands our body into anxious thoughts, fear, doubt, and attracting everything that comes along with it. Because if we keep focusing on those things, eventually they're going to come to us. Right? Then when you try to change it, your body doesn't let you because of how hardwired we are and programmed in our subconscious mind. You see, it's a cycle. It's because we've never been taught this. Once you understand this, not the application, but once you understand the truth in this, you understand life. I'm not going to take that into any more detail because the next episode has a lot to do with that. But I really hope that opened your eyes a little bit. People want tangible steps towards change. That's not what I'm here for. Unfortunately, I'm here to help you understand. And you might say, yeah, this is all good to understand, but how do I change it? You have the answers. This is what I'm trying to explain. Mental strength to control your thought is different from person to person. We've all been through different stuff, but can be trained just as easily as your physique. Actually easier because you don't even have to move. Your mind is the muscle. You can think positive thoughts. And when you harbor negativity, you can imagine yourself coming out of it. And then eventually that habitually, just like quitting smoking or something else, will be able to be programmed out of you. And once you follow these steps, eventually you'll be so in control that you'll never revert back, because how could you? But again, that has that quiet fire. You need that quiet fire in you. The reason this is so imperative for you guys to understand, for you to understand, is because this is for yourself and for when a negative thought and emotion rise. The conscious mind will be aware of your unconscious mind, and this will allow you to adapt your own methods for change, right? So what I did is when I had negative thoughts or anxious thoughts, I'd try to get my mind off it, read a book, think of great things I was grateful for, stay on course. Luckily, I was able to throw myself in a passion. I meditate. I visualize every morning and night of what I want. Like, these are just little tangible things. And if you have more questions, like, reach out. Like, I'd be happy to answer. But for the most part, I truly believe in this because it's affecting change in me. And I feel it every day. And I feel so passionately for it. And this just happened to be a serious episode because I wanted it to really hit home. I wanted it to hit hard that we have control of emotion and thinking. We just have to find the way to do it. And the way to do it is through understanding that we do and adapting our own ideologies to change. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is its faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and forgotten the gift. Albert Einstein. If you have any questions or would like to expand on some of these thoughts, feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Gmail, all at Observant Attention. And the show notes will be posted on observantattention.buzzsprout.com. One last thing. I want this podcast to reach as many people as possible, as fast as possible. If you have a sec, it would go a long way to subscribe, download, and review these episodes, as that 5-minute gesture means the world to this information. Anyway, do away with ignorance no matter your fears. Fear is a state of mind. Thank you so much for joining me today, and on this journey, stay inspired.